Welcome to AI for Everyone, Season 2. In this podcast, we will still attempt to demystify artificial intelligence with information about how to apply it, but now we're going to move into the actual application of everyday AI use. First, I will share with you my client workflow solutions. Second, my students' AI readiness and advanced projects. Third, my AI-powered writing projects, and finally, my own professional workflow as well as some creative AI endeavors. If you're an educator, a student, or a small business owner who is ready to stop just talking about AI and start putting it to work, you're in the right place. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 22 of AI for Everyone. And today I'm going to focus on explaining how my students are creating avatars in custom GPTs to explore and share their interpretations of characters from Nnedi Okorafor's excellent novel, The Death of the Author. So this isn't a theoretical discussion. It is a real project. It is happening right now. And I think it's going really, really well. I'm very proud of my students, and I'm very happy with our use of AI in general. So once again, this is occurring in our AP Literature class, and we will be taking these products that I explain and share with you today to the Great World Texts Conference in Madison, Wisconsin in April. So my students are basically creating these interactive conversational AI avatars for characters from the novel instead of writing, say, an essay about the characters. I'll tell you a little bit about the book. It's a fascinating story written by Okorafor. Now, she's a brilliant science fiction writer and fantasy author and a realistic writer who's won many, many awards. And this novel is quite important, and it's a branching off into new types of literature that bring together all different kinds of genres, but also different types of readers and different levels of exploration. I don't want to tell you a whole lot about the human characters in the story because we've focused on the rusted robot story, but I will tell you that in the book there are two coinciding stories and plot lines that are illuminating for each other and are connected, but can also stand alone. The book, the human side, is about a Nigerian author who, after a tragic event, kind of secludes herself and her life is kind of falling apart. But then she finds that by diving into a new type of writing and writing in a different way, she can explore some things, and she becomes a more digital version of herself, or a futuristic version of herself, embracing technology. And she's disabled because of an accident falling out of a tree, and she uses exoskeletons to walk and all kinds of things. I don't want to go too far into that, but the rusted robots part is what we're really interested in, what my students are tackling. And we kind of decided to focus on the robots because we just didn't want to offend anyone in our rural community by creating humans with AI at this point. For right now, they're just a little bit more comfortable with us doing that with robots. And it's been a lot of fun. So we don't want to blend or blur those lines right now, just considering our community, which is, of course, an important consideration whenever you're talking about AI. So we're building these avatars, once again, to present at the Great World Text Conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and my students are very excited. It's a fantastic program run by the UW-Madison Center for the Humanities. It's a one-day event, but it goes beyond that in some other ways. So schools all across the state are tackling these issues and ideas, and then we all meet the author and talk to the author, and it'll be good. And I will keep you updated on that as we go, both for the project, which we're about halfway through, I would say, and then also our experience there. Who knows, maybe if I can get the permission to make sure it's okay with everyone involved, we'll share some footage of what they've been doing there. for them, the stakes of this project are pretty real because quite a few of my students are competitive and they really, really want to do well. So I'm going to explain to you our workflow, and then hopefully you can replicate it. I'm sorry to say that I'm not going to be creating a video version of this today. It's really windy and stormy here where I live in Northeast Wisconsin, and I have tried to create video with my Descript tool twice, and it's very frustrating when it crashes. So I'm going just audio today. I will be explaining to you how you can go to the website where all of this information is visible. And so you'll be able to, if you like, follow along by opening up your own custom GPT tools or just ChatGPT. And then you can also follow along and see the results by going to my webpage at Hanson Education Services and selecting the SDAI 2026 page on the menu at the top. Or easier for those of you on phones, you could just type in this bit.ly address. If you type in bit.ly/SDAI 2026, you will see the page with all of my students' avatars. Now, I will tell you that this is about halfway through the project, and I'll get to the reason why it's halfway through in a minute, but I want to start by talking about the ChatGPT custom GPT tools. So the first step was, of course, choosing a tool to use and considering the cost. At our school, I persuaded the administration to purchase an OpenAI custom or an OpenAI ChatGPT account with a $20 paid version that teachers could use, and then I can use with my students and other teachers can use with their students under supervision. And that's what we use to create these custom GPTs. I got 5 Chromebooks and signed into all of them so the students don't know any of the information. And then we created the custom GPTs by going to the Explore tab on the far left if you're looking at ChatGPT, and it's 4 like sort of circles or semi-square circles. And when you click on that, you see all of the options, which is to take a look at the GPT store, or you can look at my GPTs and then create a new one. And that's what we did. So right now I'm looking at Ogachukwu's custom GPT, Ankara, Udide, Ijele, and OG, as well as our AP Lit writing skills. And then we also created an AP Lit literary and rhetorical devices helper. And then I created another one, AP Lit helper, so that students can get help at any time. So we have a series of custom GPTs that we're working on together to do well in the class and then also on this specific project. So I'm going to open up Ankara, which is the main character, by clicking on the Edit GPT pencil on the right. And then we have a space on the left for the creation or configuring of the GPT. And then on the right, you can actually see it, so you can test it in the same window. And so I explained to my students to go to the Configure tab. Not the Create is for people who just want a GPT quickly and they're not going to really craft it. I want them to know how to craft and revise and test and improve their AI avatars. So there's a spot for the name, and of course we put in the name of the character, a description, and we decided to write it in first person. So I'm Hume Robot Scholar by the name of Ankara. I travel around in search of human knowledge, and I have learned to write stories. And so storytelling is a big theme in the book, the novel. And then below that is a section for instructions. And so what we do, I tell my students to start by coming up with all the instructions that they want to give to their robot. Now, no matter how you look at it, these are basically robots without bodies. They have personalities because you give them personalities. They will do things because you tell them to do things. And then they will not do things if you tell them not to do them. And then they will fill in the gaps, aligned to the AI model that is being used in the circumstance. So we start with general instructions, and then I have them start asking it questions on the right side. The instructions section are basically to tell the custom GPT, what it can and can't do, what it should and shouldn't do, how it should interact with the user, those types of things. It is not where you put the history or the data or the information. So once they get some good instructions and they've tested a little bit, then we take those instructions and we go open another ChatGPT tab and ask ChatGPT to help us improve them, because the model knows what a custom GPT should and shouldn't do and what sections it should have. So we ask the AI to help us improve what we started with. I always want my students to start on their own, ask AI, work on their own, ask AI, and get into this collaboration with the AI. So the students have been working on these instructions for weeks. We will continue to work on them for months. We want these avatars, these disembodied robots, to be as aligned to the characters as possible. So the instructions are an ongoing process. Now below that, there's a spot for conversation starters, which I told the students they can use or not use. These are ways for them to give people a chance to get started. And most likely we will have at least a couple before we go to the conference, in case somebody's just, a young person who just doesn't know how to start. And then below that are what are called the knowledge files, or the space for the knowledge files. And these are really, really important. This is where you upload the fixed data that determines what the custom GPT will or won't say or do. Now, the students get to decide what they put inside here, but we agreed on certain things. So for example, there is a timeline, a plot timeline that the students created from the Rusted Robot section of the novel. And they, without using the internet, came up with all of the important plot points and then as much of the detail as possible. They had taken good notes and they went through and found everything, and they all worked on that document together. So we have one called the full timeline, or just full timeline. And then my recommendation to them was to create a timeline that is known by the character. So the characters are not always in all of the moments. So we don't want Ankara to know something that Ankara would not have experienced unless the character has some type of ability to communicate that way and get the information. We want to make sure that it's true to the book. So some students will have the full timeline and some will have a timeline with that character's name. So if you can see the screen, you would see that we have numerous PDF files. They create them as a Word doc, download them as PDF because they are fixed and determined at a point in time. And then below that, there's a spot for recommended model. And for now, we have left the recommended model, no recommended model, that the users get to choose it. Because at the time, we weren't 100% certain whether or not setting a higher model might limit students from being able to interact with the custom GPT. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case, but I also want them to see why we might wait. We will end up putting in a recommended model before we get there based on how deeply we want the answers to needed. If the answers are mostly going to come from the knowledge files and we're not trying to solve cancer, then we can choose a model that's faster. So the replies are much quicker and then the users have a better experience, which is probably what we'll end up doing. Underneath that is a section for what's called capabilities, where you can check what it can and can't do. So we don't want it to create any images. We don't want people messing around with image generation and using up their tokens for that kind of stuff. We don't want it to go to Canvas. We don't want any code interpreter or data analysis. All these things would just basically slow down our custom GPT. And then the student gets to decide whether or not it can go to the web search. If Ankara is a robot that is supposed to be able to access all the information on the internet, then we want Ankara to be able to do that. So people could ask Ankara questions that are not answered in the knowledge files, but Ankara could then go get them from the internet. The last thing that's really, really important is the additional settings at the bottom. We want to make sure that it is not checked, that the use conversation data in your GPT to improve our models is unchecked. OpenAI has what's called an opt-out policy regarding using the conversational data in GPTs, and it results in a whole bunch of data for them because most people don't go check these things. Whenever you use ChatGPT, if you haven't gone through and changed the settings, it is using all your conversational data to train its next models. It's one of the things I don't like about OpenAI and custom GPTs. But you can turn it off if you know how, and that's what we've done. And then you click update, and we've uploaded the image. So we've got the picture of Ankara that we made, and all of these elements are set. And now the student can share this GPT by selecting anyone with the link access and copying the link. And that's what we've done on the web page that I told you about. Once again, if you go to bit.ly SDAI 2026, you will see the page bit.ly/SDAI 2026. So that's Ankara. And if you go to that now and click on them, you can ask it questions. You can interact with it. So as I said, this is the first half of our project. We've created these avatars. We have these simple GIFs that we made with Google's VO3 and then Google Flow to take the image that we created with VO3 and turn it into a short video. And then we just made them into GIFs to easily put on the web page. Our next step is to take the characters and start to tell stories and create plot lines and developments from the end of the book to launch further and go beyond. We've decided after analyzing the main themes in the book that we believe that Nnedi Okorafor wants to push the boundaries and the edges of a novel, of a book. The death of the author is not the death of stories or a story. So we are going to continue the stories on beyond the parameters of the book. I'll be very interested. I hope my students are selected to have a question, to be able to ask her a question. And I'm going to suggest, if we do get a chance to ask her a question, if she approves or disapproves of the idea of students taking the stories and continuing them. Not for profit, not for publication in that regard, but just as the idea of the expansion of the story. And then we will also create videos. Now that we have these short videos, a series of them in Google Flow, we can create movies about each character with just textual instructions. And it's just a matter of paying a little bit more for some more tokens and then putting in the time. And that's what we're going to work on over the next couple months. And then each student, we're going to get a grant, and each student is going to get their own handheld projector. These projectors nowadays are amazing. They can hold it in the palm of their hand. It is literally the size of the palm of their hand and kind of flat. And then it'll connect to their phone through Bluetooth, and then their battery charged, so they will be able to walk anywhere they want in the conference hall and introduce their avatars to other people with the videos. And ideally, we would love it if those videos would continue to talk while someone is interacting through the phone. But most likely, there'll be some limits to that. But we will get them to go to the avatar and ask their own questions and interact with the characters the same way you can right now by going to the bit.ly account. So this is the status of this project. The goal, once again, is to learn to use AI in a way that will, for me as a teacher, excite my students, prepare them for the future, and use AI as a thinking assistant, and as they get better and better at it, as another type of intelligence that can accompany their own. Now, next week, I am going to share with you another example of a custom AI. Next week, it'll be a custom gem, and I'm either going to share my one of my custom gems or one that I've helped one of my clients create. I want to make sure I get full authorization and they don't mind. Maybe they'll join me on the show to talk about it. We'll see. But the main thing is I want you to see how these tools and this mindset towards intelligence and technology can dramatically increase efficiency, productivity, and personally, I find it exciting and thrilling and dynamic. So that's what's up for next week. Once again, if you want to see any of these tools, visit Hanson Education Services .com, and you can go to the AI for School, AI for Everyone, or the SDAI 2026 page to see these. If you or anyone you know wants some individual tutoring lessons or consulting, it is something I do. Probably going to dive deeper into it after I've retired from teaching in a few years. But for now, I'm looking for clients, and also I'd love to add a couple more schools to my consulting list. So just send me an email at hansoneducationservices@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. See you next week. Thanks for spending time with me today on AI for Everyone. I hope this episode gave you something useful to think about and something new to try. If you enjoyed it, please tell your peers and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You're also invited to join the Hanson Education Services newsletter, where I share bonus tools, practical teaching ideas, and curated updates to help you stay ahead in a world shaped by AI. To learn more, find all the resources mentioned today, and connect with me directly, visit hansoneducationservices.com. That's where you'll find everything you need to keep growing your AI confidence. Thanks again, and remember, the most important 21st century skill is to always keep learning how to learn.